The guaranteed offer is the easiest way to sell your home. It's really simple. We bring you an all-cash offer. You close in as little as 21 days. No home inspections, no lockboxes, no open houses. Go to markspain.com to get a guaranteed offer and start packing.
Welcome to the Chris Hand Show. I am not Chris Hand. I'm Cameron Smith, filling in for Chris, who was filling in for Dan, who was allegedly suspended because of a YouTube violation. Big if true. Big if true. We're going to have a good day today. I apologize that I am a little bit hoarse, so I'll need you guys to call in and help me out throughout the day. 615-737-9986. That's 615-737-9986. The reckoning is here. It is time to check the receipts. We'll do that a little bit. Look at my prognostications. The things that I put out there said were going to happen and weren't going to happen. See if those were right. We need to talk about some of the big picture of what happened. I understand that you're drinking a nice tall glass of liberal tears right now. But it's really important to understand what happened here. It wasn't just an election where Republicans did really well. It was a sea change. It was a big deal. President Trump made inroads with minority voters in ways that just hadn't happened before. I won't bore you with all the statistics, but I've been preaching Reagan's big tent, saying we don't do addition by subtraction. We cannot, as Republicans, isolate and do really well. And when I look at the election map right now, the Big Ten is back, baby. There's no other way to look at it. That this is a coalition of a bunch of different folks who said, hey, we don't like what's going on. We don't like the woke mind virus. We don't like people telling us what we need to believe, think, and feel. We're free Americans, and we want to be that way. And I don't know a better way to say it other than we're just not getting value in government for what we're paying. Trillions and trillions of dollars. I see you guys on the Super Talk text line. We are going to get to talking about the House, talking about the Senate, breaking those down, seeing what the numbers look like. That's really important. Right now, I'll just put a fine point on it. Still a little too early to tell. Republicans are net positive 2. They've gained 2 that, were toss-ups, so it looks good. But the races haven't been called. Apparently in Arizona, nobody can count. I mean, it is absolutely ridiculous that days after the election that we still don't know. They're so slow. They were slow last time. I also understand, and I want to be real clear about this. I have called balls and strikes the entire time. When Trump does something that I don't think is conservative, I call it out. So for that reason, those of you who think we need to have a coronation and have a king, I'm going to disappoint you. I apologize for that. But I believe that the institutions worth saving are those that are enshrined in the Constitution. I love separation of powers. I don't want a king. I don't care if it's a king whose policies I like. And so that, I get it. You know, the telling the truth when it's hard, when everybody wants you to just sort of clap and go along, isn't popular. I get that. On the same note, those of you who are more liberal, those of you who fancy yourselves elite, I'm really going to disappoint you too. So much like my mother on Christmas, I'm going to just disappoint everybody because my reaction is, where are we? Why does it matter? What should we do about it? I think that's what's really important here. First, Democrats, I want to back up. First, we need to do the right thing. It's Veterans Day. My brother, Kyle McMahon, he is a veteran. I have many friends who served. This is a great opportunity. When you see them, just say thank you. You don't have to have a big, uncomfortable thing. You don't have to just lay prostrate on the ground. These folks served, many of them, because it was the right thing to do. And they did it, and they served well, and we need to thank them for that. And not just today, but every day. I'll tell you what, when I see a veteran, particularly those Vietnam guys, there's not as many of them left, but when I see those guys, I thank them for their service. A lot of them wear those hats, and I just say thank you for your service, because a lot of those guys didn't get thanks when they came home. So just remember that. And some of y'all have pointed out, we do have a king, and his name is Jesus, and amen, I agree with you. But not an American government. And we should not forget that. What this is going to mean. So, wanted to get Veterans Day out of the way. Republicans won big because Democrats failed to listen to the American people. I wrote about this. I talked about this before the election and said normal people in flyover country don't connect in any way with the Democrat agenda as it stands right now. They were concerned, and they yelled and screamed to the political class. And they said, what we want are safe jobs in safe communities so we can provide for our families and live the American dream. That is a big deal. And they said that. And they said, we don't want cheap, illegal immigrant labor taking those jobs from us. It wasn't a complicated message. Democrats said, well, what we have for you is climate change, abortion, expanding the Supreme Court, and the American people said, we can't put food on the table. It is ridiculously expensive. And you know who it's not expensive for? The elites. The elites. Think about it. Go look. It's public record. Go look at the salaries at institutions of higher learning. Just go look at them. They're very high. Those jobs are largely recession-proof. And that contingent is overwhelmingly liberal. And it's very much the let them eat cake mindset of saying, well, I know what you've said you're concerned about, but you plebes, just you're wrong. And the number, when I wrote that, the number of my friends from the left who came out and said, but you just don't understand. Trump is a bad guy. He says bad things. He is awful. He has been convicted. He is this. He is. And I said, whoa, whoa, whoa. Wait a minute. Let's just stipulate all that stuff's true. The American people liked that guy more than they liked your person. And that's the truth. And that's what makes liberal heads explode. But knowing all that you know, it must be that you just don't understand why or how to vote in your own interest. And the American people said, shut up. They said, stop. And Democrats still can't figure out right now why exactly they lost. And I see y'all on the Super Talk text line about Rhino this, Rhino that. Now the Rhino party is stabbing us. Now that they have power. I just don't see that's true. President Trump's been really clear about what he wants to do. The Senate's going to Senate. On Wednesday, they're going to pick a Senate majority leader. You know what that majority leader's job is? To hold the Senate majority together, to get confirmations through, not just political appointees, but also judges. That's the job. I can't put it any other way. And in my experience as an attorney who's worked in the Senate, the more you push senators to not do something when it's a private vote, the more they do it. And what's hilarious here is neither Rick Scott nor John Cornyn nor John Thune have particularly high conservative vote scores. They just don't. The job of the majority leader is to hold the majority together on votes so that it doesn't splinter and factions get formed and then you lose your agenda. And I think that, for me, is really what I'm looking for. Fine, you should call Marsha Blackburn. You should call Bill Haggerty. You should call anybody that you want and let them know what you think. But at the end of the day, if you can't hold a majority together, you can't be majority leader. And what we've got to remember is that folks like Ted Cruz and folks like Susan Collins and now McCormick in Pennsylvania, who are in swing states, have to be on the same page. And so you can be upset and say, well, you know, we need a guy like Ted Cruz. Ted Cruz is not up for consideration for majority leader. Why? Because you've got to hold the coalition together. You can be mad about that, but this is part of having a big tent, right? When you have a big tent, when you have that majority, when you have that coalition, we're kind of glossing over it, but do you think that those voters that swung in Trump's direction on the margin are dyed-in-the-wool, rock-ribbed conservatives? Do you think the urban black voter in Pennsylvania who said, you know, I'm going to give these guys a shot is the same as somebody that vote for Ted Cruz? Of course not. That's just not the way it is. And so whoever the majority leader is, and I've literally seen all three of these guys called rhinos, and then Elon Musk said he liked Rick Scott, and all of a sudden Rick Scott was the MAGA guy. But if the issue here is only the rock-ribbed conservative can be the majority leader, well, then you don't have any options at present. And I would argue that if you want Trump's agenda to go through, if you do want to see the bureaucracy dismantled, you got to get all the Republicans to work together, and they're actually on the same page right now. They realize that the bureaucratic state is the problem. If you're already trying to do the infighting and poke at each other, then good luck. And Jason says, well, the problem is that the vote should not be private. We should know any and everything that our representation votes for at the end of the story. I hear you, but there's also, on this one, there's a lot of back and forth here. This isn't they get in the room and they are passionate about this. And it does not help anybody to have that conversation out in the public. I think having it and saying, here's the majority leader. Look, I've told y'all that Mitch McConnell is a great majority leader, and a lot of y'all disagree with me. I understand that. You should thank him for the Supreme Court because he held the coalition together, and they're there. And, man, I don't know too many of y'all that are going to tell me that you don't like those judges and that you don't like that Supreme Court. For whatever you have to say about McConnell, he held the coalition together. When they didn't know about some of the judges, he held them together. And you got to have somebody that can do that again if you want to see the Trump agenda go through Congress. That's what you got to see. We got to take a break. When we come back, we'll look at, okay, how does this shake out? How does it look in the House? How does it look in the Senate? I'm Cameron Smith, and this is the Chris Hand Show on Super Talk 99.7.
Did you know you're overpaying for your health and wellness products?
With over 20 company-owned brands offering its members vitamins, supplements, wellness, and skincare products, you're able to save up to 70% off retail.
Members Nutrition can't change your life, but we can change the way you live.
Up ahead, can he do it? President Trump wants to fill some federal vacancies without Senate approval. Also, another national chain decides to close all of its stores, citing inflation pressures. Those stories coming up at 9:30 on Super Talk 99.7 WTN.
Welcome back. I'm Cameron Smith, filling in for Chris Hand, who's filling in for Dan Mandis, dealing with a YouTube suspension, allegedly. Big if true. Big if true. I'll just continue to say that. The challenge here, and we're talking about that many of you have now shifted to this mindset of, well, now that we've beaten the Democrats, the biggest concern are other Republicans. I hear you. I do. I don't like it when Republicans tell me that I can't do conservative things. I didn't like it when Republicans during the last Trump administration still spent like they were drunk. I mean, the difference in deficits between the Trump administration, the last one, and the Biden administration, it's $6 trillion in spending versus $7 trillion in spending. And now, yeah, $1 trillion is nothing to laugh about. But the idea that we've done all these conservative things and we're going to keep doing them, well, pay attention to reality. Several of y'all made the point, and I think this is a fair point, of, well, Cameron, are you telling us that we have to moderate, that we have to accept that conservative things won't get done? No, you don't have to accept that at all. You just have to have a conservative leader who can bring a broad spectrum. Remember that big tent? Those folks that barely won, who are those senators on the margin who can't take extreme votes? Because if they do, they'll lose the next go round. I understand it's 6 years. But my take on it is you got to have somebody who can hold it together. So hold it together. Like, that to me is the big deal, is they've got to hold it together. If y'all think Rick Scott is the guy, that's fine. I think Rick Scott can hold it together. He's from Florida. I think he can. Absolutely. I think John Cornyn can. I think John Thune can. I'm not upset about any of them. I'm simply saying the senators need to vote for the person that has the best chance to hold the votes together to get the conservative things through. Like, for example, a Senate Majority Leader that puts a federal abortion ban on the floor, even after Trump says he's not going to do it. Well, guess what? That's going to split Republicans, and it's going to be a defeat. That's what's going to happen. So I think that's the way to look at this. I encourage you to call. I'm not saying don't call and voice your preference. I'm simply saying that hold it together. And I get it that we've got the scorecards and things like that from different conservative organizations. And I just want to put a fine point on it. A lot of these organizations make money off pitting Republican against Republican. They play this game, and frankly, I've seen organizations here in Tennessee do the same thing, pitting Republican against Republican and saying that, well, we're the true conservatives. And look, I get it. I've played that game. I've been a part of organizations that did that. But it's not right. The Big Tent is the way to go. Think about it this way. Republicans just secured this big tent. Are we now going to turn around and say, hey, you can't be in the tent? We need to shrink the tent because it's too big, because there's a lot of people that have different perspectives in this tent. My take would be, let's use this majority to do really conservative things. Like, I don't know, move the federal bureaucracy out of Washington, D.C., spread it around the country. You know, a pile of manure on a farm is just a pile of manure. You spread it around as fertilizer. And so that's what we need to talk about. That's what we will talk about over the next couple hours. I'm Cameron Smith. This is the Chris Hand Show, and you're listening to Super Talk 99.7.
Good morning. It's now 9:31. I'm Joan Jones with your top stories. We've got your forecast coming up in just a couple of minutes. Stick around for that. President-elect Trump is aiming to get his leadership team seated early, wasting no time. ABC's Christiane Cordero reports he wants to fill some federal vacancies without Senate approval.
The Constitution does give presidents the power to make appointments without consulting the Senate, but only during extended congressional breaks. The three senators running for majority leader, John Thune, John Cornyn, and Rick Scott, quickly signaled support for allowing recess appointments.
A Metro Nashville police officer has been fired after a DUI arrest early Saturday morning. Fellow officers arrested 50-year-old Sergeant Michael Dixon, who had been sitting in his truck in the driveway of a home on Old Hickory Boulevard. The homeowner had called police after Dixon reportedly pulled up to the house and then walked onto her front porch. If it wasn't a lot of rain, we did get what did fall over the weekend did help to make a dent in our drought. The U.S. Drought Monitor shows moderate to extreme drought conditions across Middle Tennessee, especially in Marshall, Bedford, and in Lincoln counties. Another sign of inflation taking its toll. Furniture chain American Freight is closing all 328 stores, including those in Tennessee and Kentucky. Officials said sustained inflation and macroeconomic challenges are to blame. American Freight is now hosting store closing sales. Well, this is Veterans Day. The people of Nashville will thank the nation's heroes with a parade through downtown. That parade will kick off at 11 o'clock this morning, but Broadway is already shut down now through noontime between 14th Avenue and 1st Avenue. That's the latest news. Weather still to come. I'm Joan Jones, WTN News.
Welcome back to the Chris Hand Show. I'm Cameron Smith. We're talking about sort of next steps. What does the Senate need to do? And like I said, a quick survey of X before Elon Musk weighed in on favor of Rick Scott. You had Rick Scott was a rhino, John Thune's a rhino, John Cornyn's a rhino, or they're not. It's just kind of all over the place. Michael on the Super Talk text line says Roll Tide, and after that LSU game, oh yeah, baby. I'm feeling that, Michael. But I look at where the Senate is. And like I said, holding the coalition together matters. This is not to say the coalition is there to be moderate or squishy. That's not the point. It's to keep the votes together, to get the conservative things done. And 1063 says you'll never have a coalition with deep state rhinos. They'll always stab you in the back. Maybe. I don't think that's necessarily true. And I think one of the things that you're going to hear less of is this idea, and I've written about this because I think this is, and said that I got it wrong. But this focus on democratic norms and institutions, it sounds cool, except for you can't eat a democratic norm. You can't, your family can't survive on that. The institutions of our republic. Well, what do we mean by that? And a lot of people, when they say institutions, they really just mean bureaucracies. And that's not going to work because these are the bureaucracies that have failed people. And so there's a whole, the left is very worried after the red wave. Let's call it what it was, a red wave. Are some of these races really close? Sure. Could this have gone the other way? Sure. You can look at the numbers and see that. But it didn't. So it was a wave election. What do we take away from this? What did Democrats take away? Democrats take away that you guys are racist. You're bigots. If you would have known what was good for you, you wouldn't have supported Trump. Well, that's why Democrats lose. And I don't know about you guys, but this happens to me all the time. I'm talking with, I think it's really important to have friends who disagree with you. That is something I value. It's something I'd recommend you guys valuing. It doesn't mean you have to concede the ground or bend the knee or do anything like that, but it's good to not just live in an echo chamber. You want people to challenge you periodically so that when they challenge you, you're able to stand and deliver and explain what you believe. Well, what happens to me when my Democratic friends challenge me, let's say something like life. I'll say, well, actually biological sex isn't plastic. There are men and women, and that matters from a biological standpoint. Well, what my liberal friends tend to do is just start explaining. Well, what you don't understand is, and fill in the blank, right? And they keep explaining it to me because they're, in the back of their mind, they think that it's that I'm a low information voter, that if only I knew more that I would support them. Well, I just wrote this column. Voters would rather be offended by Republicans than condescended to by Democrats. That's what this election said. And Democrats continue to do this loop of, let me explain it to you. If you just understood that you're voting against your self-interest, I hear that one all the time, that your self-interest is to just have this government inertia. No, it's not. And I think what we need to have here is just burn the ships. And what I mean by that, y'all remember the Affordable Care Act, right? The Affordable Care Act was a darling of the political left. They said, we want to do this. You know, they really wanted universal health care. They wanted government health care. But the Affordable Care Act was as close as they could go. And so what they did, I saw it firsthand. is Nancy Pelosi said, we're going to spend our political capital. She said, I don't care if we lose some elections. We're going to do some hard things. And they did. They lost, I think, the House right after that. But Republicans have been dealing with the Affordable Care Act ever since. They've gutted a lot of provisions of it, but they haven't been able to just flat out repeal it. And speaking of Mitch McConnell, when I was a Senate Judiciary staffer, when I was a counsel on the Senate Judiciary Committee, Mitch McConnell would send one of his leadership staff down to the Senate Judiciary and tell us why we couldn't do conservative things. He would explain to me why on immigration we needed to be more in line with the Bush administration. We needed to do this stuff. And I always stuck in my craw because there was never a moment to burn capital. I think that's this moment that Republicans have to have. Hopefully we get the House majority. Like I said, it's close right now. We only need, I think, 4 more to get to 218. But they're still counting, still looking at very close elections. But if you have the House, Senate, and White House, you've got to do big things. That's just how it works. And unfortunately, we think small. It's been, if I ask you guys right now, what is it that you want right now? Well, secure the border. Got it. Totally agree. I think that's going to happen. Okay. What else? Well, we want to spend less. I do too. I think that's really good. I think we need to address our national debt. I haven't seen any suggestion that we're going to see radically restrained budgets. I wish I could tell you that. So the question is, and y'all can answer on the Members Nutrition Super Talk text line, 615-737-9986. If you've got the House, the Senate, and the White House, what is the big conservative goal that you want to see? Republicans have this political capital. What do we want to do with it? We can't say, well, we're going to save it for another day when we'll do some conservative thing. Caitlin says start drilling. So I agree, Caitlin. This is one of the things that politicians kind of mess us over on, is they say, well, we're going to open up all this exploration. Well, you know who does the exploring? Companies. Companies are also smart that if everybody runs and they pull it all out of the ground and put it on the market, it's a commodity. You put a lot of supply on the market, it drops the price way down. So it's harder to make money. So a lot of them are like, ew. So they don't drill. Even if we open it up from a government level, open Keystone Pipeline, agreed. Same thing. That's how you transmit this stuff. Start mass deportations. Abolish the ATF. Okay, I like the idea of going after federal agencies. And I said this earlier, and a couple of y'all hooked on it and said, wait a minute. What are you talking about doing things, spreading around the federal government? All right, I got a big idea. A lot of you guys want to drill. Y'all should go work on an oil rig. I like that. Like, let's bring out supply on the marketplace. I think a lot of the companies won't want to do that because they want to make money. So we got to be careful there. We need God back. God didn't leave, just to be real clear. But y'all are bringing all these in. When we come back, we got to take a break, but we need to start the conversation about what we're going to do with the federal government. It's too big. It's chonky. It's weird. We need to fix it. Bobby says, leaving the time at daylight savings time year round. Amen. I cannot handle the darkness. Y'all keep them coming. When we get back, we'll talk about them. I'm Cameron Smith. This is the Chris Hand Show, and you're listening to Super Talk 99.7.
Hey, what's up, guys? It's Matt Murphy in the middle of downtown Franklin, Tennessee. We've talked so much about Savory Spice. I thought, why not show you the place? So let's go on in and see what's popping at Savory Spice. As I've always said, you will smell the spices even before you walk in. I can smell them right here in the doorway. Come on in and let's introduce you to the one and only Holly, who is the owner and proprietor of Savory Spice. Say hey, Holly.
Hello, everyone.
Now, enough about Holly. Let's talk about spicy and easy products like the incredible taco soup, which, as I said, you put this in a crock pot, you put all the ingredients that it tells you to buy right there, you put the spices in, and it's so easy. So if you don't know what you're doing around the kitchen, it's a perfect way to find your way around the kitchen, as is the Mediterranean dill risotto. Now, for the holidays, pumpkin pie spice. What doesn't it have, Holly?
Pumpkin.
It doesn't have any pumpkin in it. That's a fun fact for all of you kids out there. Now, if you stop by Savory Spice, either in the Franklin location or at L&L Market, you can get yourself a sample of the dill dip, which is my absolute favorite. Just tell them Matt Murphy sent you to Savory Spice with purchase now. So come by Franklin or L&L Market in Nashville and come see Holly and the entire crew at Savory Spice.
up ahead, did FEMA skip over Trump houses in Tennessee too? There's an investigation underway. Also, new dolls that just hit the store shelves promote porn sites on the packaging. We'll tell you what to look for. Those stories coming up at 10 o'clock on Super Talk 99.7 WTN.
Welcome back to the Chris Hand Show. I'm Cameron Smith. And when Joan gets to the porn on packaging, that's a funny story. It is truly hilarious. And I can't wait for you guys to hear about that because...
It's hilarious except to parents of 12-year-old girls.
Yes.
You know?
Yes, I have a house full of boys, so we don't have to worry about
All
doll
right.
packaging. But, oh, my goodness. That is... Oh, wow. That's
Insane.
good. I won't spoil it.
Okay, good. Thanks.
No, I don't want to. I don't want to jump the route. Okay, so I want to tell you guys, I am fired up that you guys have on the Super Talk text line 615-737-9986 flooded it with ideas, and I really, as you guys know, I like to call balls and strikes. I like to have the back and forth. This is what I'm talking about, right? 5422 says, get rid of the Department of Education. That's specific, right? That's something that we can look at and say, oh, we either did that or we didn't. And then we can sort of see how people voted and we can deal with it accordingly. Unless you know what you want with politicians, they're happy for you to play the navel-gazing game of who's a rhino and who's not. That's easy because it's sort of squishy, so they can kind of pivot one way or another. You can replace rhino with establishment. Whatever here's some words, and you're this word or you're not, or you're the most conservative or you're not. Based on what? I mean, I was just playing with the different scorecards, and again, I'm telling you, all these scorecards for who's a good one and who's a bad one. Elise Stefanik, who's going to be the ambassador to the United Nations, according to the scorecard, big bad, really bad, not conservative. Okay. You know, Rick Scott on one gets a high A and another a low B. John Thune swings 30 points. I mean, at the end of the day, it's just putting you on a treadmill and keeping you busy. So you're like, well, I'm serious and I'm super this or ultra that. And this person is, okay, fine. Abolish the IRS. That is something that we can measure whether politicians did or not. Implement a fair tax, flat income tax, decide where our taxes go. Be specific about what you want because 3673 is speaking my love language. Almost everything should be sent back to the states. Amen. But I think here, this is where I think Republicans must find common ground. Let's come up with the specifics that we want. The one I want is decentralize the federal government. There is absolutely no reason that all the agencies need to be in Washington, D.C. Their headquarters doesn't need to be there. They literally can be anywhere in the country, and we're putting them in a place where it's a bureaucratic protection city. District, I should say. It's a bureaucratic protection district. 90-something% Democratic. Keep my jobs. Keep the bureaucracy. Don't ever roll it back. Well, part of the problem is it's all in one place. All right. Think about it this way. I'm just floating this. I'm going to write a column on it. I want to know what you think. What if Department of Agriculture was based in Iowa? What if the Department of Energy was based in Texas? What if the Department of Commerce was right here in Nashville? What would happen? Does anything break? No, nothing. We have all the technology to have all the Zoom meetings you want. We don't even have people in office all the time. So we have empty office buildings in Washington, D.C., when we could be saying, let's spread this around the country. And let's have a bunch of different kinds of people come in and help us out. So it's not just bureaucrats over and over and over again telling bureaucrats how to bureaucrat. It's normal folks getting a job with the government in a place that isn't Washington, D.C. Tell me what else you want. Tell me what else you think, and over the next 2 hours, we'll discuss it. I'm Cameron Smith. This is the Chris Hand Show. You're listening to Super Talk 99.7.
It's now 10 o'clock, and I'm Joan Jones with your top stories. We've got your forecast coming up, but right now, 63 degrees, just a couple of clouds sticking around. Tennessee Governor Bill Lee announcing an investigation into FEMA, which will take place alongside a federal investigation after whistleblowers revealed FEMA workers were instructed to skip homes with Trump signs or flags.
FEMA Administrator Deanne Criswell says the unnamed supervisor ran a survivor assistance team and told her workers not to go to homes with yard signs supporting President-elect Donald Trump.
The supervisor's name, however, is Marnie Washington, and she has been fired. The Daily Wire reports Governor Lee wants to know if the same protocol was practiced in Tennessee after Hurricane Helene. Well, police are looking for a group of men who have been robbing people at gunpoint in Antioch, leaving people frightened for their lives.
And that they're scared to even step outside or turn on their cars in the morning. In fear that they're going to get robbed is so scary.
That woman tells Channel 4 that the robberies are happening near the intersection of Richards Road and Antioch Pike. So far, police say the victims have all been Hispanic people who were robbed right in front of their homes. A lot of weekend drivers got stuck along I-65 in a backup yesterday because of a crash that happened around 6 o'clock near Bethel Road. It happened when a pickup truck hauling a camper overturned, blocking both lanes. It took 2 hours to clean up the mess. Smoky Bar News reporting there were no life-threatening injuries. Just this morning, a man crashed his car into the side of a building after he was shot in South Nashville. Now, this happened about 6 o'clock this morning on Woodbine Street at Nolensville Pike. The man was found shot inside the SUV when police arrived. His condition is not known. And toy maker Mattel apologizing for a blunder involving the packaging for its newest line of dolls.
The wizard who should be afraid of me.
The film adaptation of the Broadway musical Wicked is about to open in theaters, and Universal Pictures partnered with toy maker Mattel to market dolls based on the characters. But the website listed on the package takes you to Wicked, a company that produces adult movies. Mattel has issued a statement saying it deeply regrets this, quote, unfortunate error.
That's ABC's Jim Ryan reporting stocks are all pointing sharply upward. Dow Jones Industrial's gaining 431 points. That's the latest news. Weather's next. I'm Joan Jones, WTN News.
The guaranteed offer is the easiest way to sell your home. It's really simple. We bring you an all-cash offer. You close in as little as 21 days. No home inspections, no lock boxes, no open houses. Go to markspain.com to get a guaranteed offer and start packing.
Welcome back to the second hour of the Chris Hand Show. I'm Cameron Smith, and every time I hear that music, it reminds me of Enya. And I don't want to sail away right now. I don't want to. But we do need to talk about what you guys want from this new Republican majority. So I'll run down. Man, there's just so many things to talk about right now. And so I'm trying to get to all of them. I appreciate you guys on the text line letting me know what you want to see from the Republican majority. Right now, and I know Real Clear Politics and some other places have the House majority within a couple votes. I tend to go with the AP on this stuff because they're slow. It's not because I think they always get it right, but when they're going to call it, it's closer. Right now, it's 214 to 203, and GOP's gained 2 seats. I think we're going to get the majority. I really do. The Senate, it was good. I don't want to say anything other than it was good. As I mentioned before, and I tweeted this out, you can go hashtag TNPolitics at @DCameronSmith on X and check it out. I said that Kari Lake was a terrible candidate and that Arizona was going to split. It was going to go to Trump and she was going to lose. That's what happened. That was an unforced error. That's about all I can say because Gallego wasn't a great candidate, but, she managed to lose that one. That stinks. Jackie Rosen held off Sam Brown in Nevada. Money, infrastructure, it mattered there. Bernie Moreno picked it up for Sherrod Brown. I'm telling y'all, Ohio, Rust Belt states, right now, you're seeing a lot of the unions, particularly union rank and file. They're like, we like the populist Republicans. I don't know what this Democratic stuff is, but, your climate change agenda and some of these things is threatening my job. And they're starting to wake up and say, oh, maybe I want to keep my job. We knew we were going to get Montana, and we did. We knew we were going to get West Virginia. We did. It was not close either. 68.9 to 27.6 in West Virginia. Sheehy won 52.8 to 45.4 in Montana. Pennsylvania, AP has called it for Dave McCormick. 49% to 48.4%. Schumer's being a weirdo. 5364 says, sorry, not sorry, but people that split their votes are complete idiots. Okay, I hear that, but I traveled to Pennsylvania because I'd never been in a swing state. I did it couple weeks before the election. I'd never been in a swing state during a presidential cycle. I've been in deep red Alabama. I've been in Tennessee, been in Washington, D.C., which is deep blue, but never a place where they were spending money. And the truth is, those states are actually swing states. Like they see it could go either way. It's very much a toss-up. So it's not weird to them like it is to us in Tennessee. In Tennessee, if Marsha Blackburn had lost, we would have everybody been like, what's the problem? What's going on? This is strange. What's happening? But 53-40-64 says, I don't understand how you can vote for one side of ideas and vote for someone else. I think you can, though, right? That you can look at it and say, on the big picture, in terms of the race that controls the federal government and the agencies, I like Trump. This is one senator, and man, she's already lost the race for governor, and I don't like people that want to be perpetual politicians, right? This is the Romney problem of, well, you just keep running for different things, and eventually a lot of people just say, no, stop. We do not want to keep recycling things. Like, you need to go away. And Lake said no. She kind of reminds me of just like a cable news host. But yeah, people can split in swing states. They don't typically split in a place like Tennessee. But, the Senate right now, 53 to 46. And you've got Bernie in Vermont, Angus King in Maine. They're part of that 46. So all in all, a good night. It was a great map. Texas very, very much stayed red. There was a fear that Texas, was trending blue because it had in past election cycles looked closer and closer. And this one, it wasn't. Ted Cruz won 53.1 to 44.5 against a former NFL player who was actually a very strong candidate for the Democrats. So that's kind of where we are. But if you get that pickup in the House and you've got the House, Senate, and the White House, we should expect that we do big things. Kamala and Carrie Lake are the same quality of candidate, 4049 on the text line. Yeah, I agree. Harris was the supposed to be candidate. And I don't think it's a secret, but I think one of the things that people really didn't like about Harris was that they didn't get an opportunity to vote for her. The elites, like if your problem was the elites aren't connecting with you, then how could you connect with a candidate that the elites had selected and said, this is who you shall vote for. She's historic and wonderful and great. And they spent, 3-1 over Trump and still couldn't get it done. But I do think as if I had to call it today, the House is going Republican too. If you start to look at the individual districts and break it down, it's going to be a minute because some of these are truly really close. The idea that this was a blowout, well, you look at all the red and stuff and you're like, yeah, it was a blowout. Okay, cool. But if you look at the margins on what makes the difference in the election, it's still pretty tight. It's within a couple points. The idea that we're just, automatically all Republican now, I think probably isn't true. And if Republicans don't pay attention to that and say, okay, who gave us the majority? Well, it's working class Americans. So the policies need to orient around working class Americans, families. How do you make their life easier? In terms of the policies that I want to see, y'all love this. Let me try this experiment with you guys. I just looked up usa.gov/agency-index. That's the website. And it is an alphabetical list of U.S. government departments and agencies. These are all things that you're paying for, okay? And you tell me which one of these that we need. Administration for Community Living. Advisory Council on Historic Preservation. Agency for Global Media. Agency for Toxic Substance and Disease Registry. I mean, that sounds probably helpful, maybe. I don't know exactly what they do. Agricultural Marketing Service. Agricultural Research Service. Those are some of the A's. Let's pick another random number. M. The Marine Mammal Commission. The Middle East Broadcasting Networks. The Office of Minority Health. Sounds good for minority folks to be healthy. Let's pick another. There can't be that many. Voice of America. How about that? I know some of y'all want to get rid of the VA and just give veterans private insurance on Veterans Day. That makes a lot of sense. Office on Violence Against Women. Again, it's the proliferation of agencies and bureaucracy. And then the left says, well, look, if you gut these things, you must want, I'm assuming the Office on Violence Against Women isn't, supporting violence against women. It's it is finding ways to combat violence against women. And so if you get rid of the office, then you must want to be violent towards women. And so I'm reading these and y'all are saying, well, we should probably just get rid of a lot of these, to which I would say I agree. If you need a federal bureaucracy to tell you not to be violent towards women, we've got a bigger problem. And this is how the tentacles of government get into everything. Because once we do a thing, then if you ever try to undo the thing, then people tell you, well, you support evil, bad things. And this has really been a big deal. And I've had to come around on this because at first I was like, well, we need to build consensus. And no, when it comes to the federal government right now, it is bloated. It is useless. And we are just burning money for this. It shouldn't be a jobs program. It just shouldn't be. And so we need to literally take a hatchet to it and say, no, we need to defund and get rid of so many of these agencies, to which the Democrats will say, well, these institutions are critical. No, they're not. The institutions that are critical for America, a constitutional government, yeah, that's pretty critical. I think that we need a federal government. I think we need state government. You know, state governments are the seat of most of government. We need that. Churches, synagogues, places of worship, those are mediating institutions that are really, really important. We absolutely need them. And the left has discredited them and said they're not important. Community. Like our local schools and things like that, they really matter. A lot of these federal agencies don't. That's just the truth. You don't need to keep this stuff. And anyone that tells you that we need some of these random letter agencies is just lying. The Woodrow Wilson International Center for Scholars. Do we need that? Tell me why we need, I'm just picking letters at this point. Some of these are so weird. And where do we put them? Imagine these get all spread around the United States. Department of Agriculture goes to Iowa. Department of Commerce comes to Nashville. I'd probably leave the DOD where it is. They got a lot of those infrastructure there. Several of y'all have said get rid of the Department of Education, and I would actually support that. The idea that we need a federal bureaucracy when the states have it handled, just block grant that to the states. If you want to roll, a lot of politicians in Washington want to say they support education. You want to do block grants to the state, that's great. You know how much education funding the federal government's responsible for? About 10%. And because of that 10%, they get to put strings in everything we do. So, and then this was an issue in Tennessee. Legislature was like, well, why don't we just not take federal money and then we don't have to listen to them? That's true, and people went nuts because they're like, you're going to hurt the children. You're hurting the children. You don't realize it. Department of Energy, take it to Texas. Health and Human Services. You know what? We'll put Department of Commerce in Wyoming, and we'll take Health and Human Services in Nashville because we got great healthcare infrastructure. How about that? You think that would be good for Nashville? I do. How about Homeland Security somewhere in the middle of the homeland so it's more immune from attack? How about Department of Labor, Ohio? We can go down the list. Department of Transportation. Okay. We can put that in Kentucky. You see what I'm doing here? You're just... It's a lie that all this stuff needs to be in Washington. You know who wants you to believe that lie? All the lobbyists who find it really convenient that they can lobby the agencies and Congress at the same time. I think that if you want to get lobbyists and that group out of it, spread it around, make them have to get on an airplane. It makes a lot of sense. It'll work. 3999 said drone technology has made armor and infantry obsolete on the battlefield. Well, man, we should probably put that in a tech hub like, I don't know. We can put that in Tennessee too. Let's locate a lot of things here. I'm Cameron Smith. This is the Chris Hand Show, and you're listening to Super Talk 99.7. Welcome back to the Chris Hand Show. I'm Cameron Smith, and we're talking about what we want to have happen. And I think what I'm seeing from you guys is you want to see the federal government reined in. It's real clear on immigration, and I think what you're going to see with immigration is absolutely going to come to fruition. You're going to see a much more strident policy than anything under the Biden-Harris administration. Dave in Columbia has been really patient. Dave, let's talk about the bloated federal government. What do you think?
Well, so I have 4 points.
Okay.
One, I think we ought to limit the federal government to the first 10 amendments, the roles and responsibilities granted by them, and nothing more.
Sure.
Secondly, the state government should go back to operating off their constitutions, which might require repealing the 14th Amendment. Number 3, we should repeal the 17th Amendment and allow state legislatures to elect their senators so the rights of the states would be protected. And then number 4, we should repeal the 16th Amendment, the income tax, and allow the federal government to give each state legislature a bill each year based on their population.
So
that wouldn't happen overnight. It's going to take years because it took us years to get where we're at.
Yeah, I like ending the direct election of senators because I do think that having some state representation actually is a good thing for reining in the federal government. But repealing the 14th Amendment, help me out on that one.
Well, the 14th Amendment is where the federal government justifies it inserting itself into the state governments, and maybe there's a way without doing that. But the state governments need to begin taking responsibility for running themselves, running off their own money, and not looking or having their hand out to the federal government, because that compromises the interests of the state.
Yeah, but you understand the history of the 14th Amendment of, hey, here's why we did that is because you guys weren't going to give rights to enslaved people.
Well, that's one aspect. I think maybe we need to look into that more comprehensively because I think they've used it for many other things besides that now.
Sure.
So maybe that needs to be more restricted.
Yeah. Whoa.
So,
what needs to be more restricted? The right itself or the, ensuring that the rights of formerly enslaved people are respected?
What needs to be restricted is how broadly they interpret it.
Okay. I got you. I just want to be real clear there because that's an area where we need to be quite clear.
Yeah, the scope of what it allows the federal government to do.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate the call, Dave. Thank you. I think that's part of the problem is that states sort of, they don't like the federal government, but then they say, we want your money. Like, we want your support. We want your thing. Like, that's the perfect example is education funding. About 10% of education funding that it flows through to public schools in Tennessee is federal money. The rest comes from the states, local communities, that kind of thing. So why would we give a Department of Education a lot of say over how we do things for 10% of the money? And the answer is because we will go nuts. People will lose their minds if you say we're going to reduce funding for kids by 10%. It just can't be done. And I think we've got to get over some of those things and say, well, look, we can block grant it. We don't need all the strings attached. Let people in different states educate their kids differently. We don't need uniform standards of everything everywhere. But that's the problem with the federal government right now, is it's basically saying, yes, we do. We have to be a monolith. We can't be the United States. We have to be the United State. And that bureaucracy, that statist approach to doing things, I'm not on board with, and I don't think many of you guys are either. We got to take a break. I'm Cameron Smith. This is the Chris Hand Show on Super Talk 99.7. Those are some harsh keystrokes right there. I'm Cameron Smith. This is the Chris Hand Show. We've been talking about what do we want now that it looks like Republicans are going to have control of Washington. Kenny, I see you over there in Mount Juliet, wants to talk about the 17th Amendment, and we'll get to that in a second. I wanted to address 0779. I'll just read it. Cameron, I get where you're going, but I think it's a mistake to start shipping federal government departments all over the country. What you would be doing is creating little Northern Virginias and DCs all over. Why deliberately metastasize the cancer? No, just eliminate the agencies where possible and reduce their size if outright elimination is impossible. Don't spread them all over the rest of the country to create little blue enclaves. Fair concern. I hear you there. First, we should eliminate agencies and reduce their size as a first step. I think what the move does is it creates that opportunity because you have federal civil service protections and things like that that say, essentially, it's really hard to fire a lot of these folks. And frankly, they'll argue, well, it's not my fault that you wanted to do this political thing. Why should I get punished? I just, press a clock or do my function. Like, I'm not the bad guy here. I agree. So you could say, well, you can keep your job. You just got to move. And a lot of them will say, well, I don't really want to do that. And so it creates an opportunity to kind of break some of this stuff up. Also, I don't think you're going, for that same reason, I don't think you're going to be exporting people to a lot of these places. Some of the folks that are like dyed-in-the-wool progressives are not going to move to Alabama or Tennessee or Texas. They're just not. They do not want to do that. So there's as equal a chance that the staff for these agencies becomes more conservative, that folks from the surrounding community impact the government. And I think that's the problem that we have right now. The day-to-day Nashvilleian, the day-to-day Tennessean doesn't really impact the federal government. We send our federal delegation to Washington to say, hey, please do this. And then they come back. I understand that, but imagine that we have the ability to directly affect the bureaucracy right now. I think that makes a lot of sense, and we should, because I don't like the idea that the practice that the lobbying class, the corporate class, the folks with money have a consolidated target to go and advocate for their interest. But for us, I don't know about you guys, but I don't have a lobbyist. I don't have somebody that I pay to go. I have people that I elect. Some of them I don't hear from that often. I don't know about, maybe y'all regularly get a hold of your federal representatives and you have conversations about what you want them to do, and then they report back. I actually know a lot of them. I have the ability to call them, but a lot of them don't call me. They don't tell me. So my point is, man, I like to have a direct influence over aspects of the federal government. And that goes to whether, we should consider repealing the 17th Amendment. Kenny, what do you think about the 17th Amendment?
Okay, it's not Kenny, it's Timmy, but that's
Timmy. Okay,
matter.
Good deal.
All right, I want to read something from the Federalist or Constitutional Debates number 39 from James Madison, because people don't understand. You keep referring to the federal government. The federal government does not exist anymore, and I'll explain why.
Okay.
In the beginning, this is James Madison. The proposed Constitution, therefore, is in strictness neither a national nor a federal constitution, but a composition of both.
Right.
So you have the composition of a national system and a federal system. Okay. Now, I'm going to read this part. The House of Representatives will derive its powers from the people of America, and the people will be represented in the same proportion and on the same principle as they are in the legislature of particular states. So far, the government is national. So the House of Representatives was the national government, okay?
Right.
National system. Okay, then it goes on. The Senate, on the other hand, will derive its powers from the states as political and co-equal societies, and these will be represented in the principle of equality in the Senate as there are in the existing Congress.
Sure.
That was under the Articles of Confederation. Then he says, so far the government is federal, not national. So what happened with the 17th Amendment by letting the people elect the senators, just like they're elected the House of Representatives, which are divided into simple districts? That was the people of all America voting as if they are one simple state or one super state. That was the national government. And when they put in the 17th Amendment, that ended the federal government because the states no longer have a voice, or the state governments. Therefore, the federal government ended with the 17th Amendment. So you have a wholly national government now. You don't have a federal government. And that wholly national government is run by two private political party factions.
Yes.
That's the way it is. And people need to understand the enemy is not the federal government, because the federal government is the voice of the state government. The national government is all of the people combined as if they're one simple state.
Yeah.
That was the argument about it being a consolidation of the states. They made that big argument back then.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I appreciate the call. I think that you make a point that if you don't have the states appointing, and some of the issue here was that when before the 17th Amendment, there was some concern in state legislators. The discussion over who would get appointed would often get heated, and you wouldn't get majorities, and then the state wouldn't be represented in the Senate. Well, you could switch that by just doing it to a plurality. There were any number of ways doing it other than what we actually did. And the idea was, well, this will somehow lead to election of judges and all of these other things they thought would come with direct election of senators, and it never happened. And the problem is we don't have the states adequately represented, just like the caller was talking about. We don't have states represented in Congress. Yes, I understand the senators are supposed to represent the state, but realistically, they're representing the voters of the state, not the state government. Why does that matter? Because somebody needs to slap the hand of the federal government. Somebody needs to say, you're overreaching. This is properly left to the states, but you're not doing it. You're encroaching on our turf. And so the state governments need advocates in Washington to say no. What happens is when you have direct election of senators, they try to bring home the bacon. They want to give you stuff. They don't really care how it comes through. That's what the politicians are there for. And so the state has nobody. There's no real advocate for the state. And people who talk about this stuff, talk about the 17th Amendment, will say, well, more power to the people. Well, the people elect the state legislature. They elect them and say, here's who we want to decide this question. Okay. But you get somebody that's less, I don't know how to say it, but political. They're more, do we effectively relay and convey the interest of the state? Like the state government, the entity of legal authority, or not? And that's basically what we get them appointed or not. And folks can say, well, it's corrupt. And that, well, do you think that we have corrupt folks now? Yeah. I don't think direct election somehow magically makes that disappear. But I think it's a conversation worth having. I don't see that one changing. I don't see the existing senators being interested in putting forth a constitutional amendment that says, the folks in the legislature get to pick them now. I don't want to see that, because then guess what those guys have to do? They have to go up in Washington, pay attention to everything there, and then come back and pay attention to the state legislatures. And they don't want to do that. Right now they can say, that's not my field, that's not my domain, I'm federal, leave me alone. And I think that's a big part of the problem. Jason said, I emailed Mark Green in November of last year and still have not received anything back from him. Mark, I would probably get on that, because Jason's here all week, every week, and he talks to people with microphones. But that's my point, right? Is we go along with this and we say, well, these are the good conservative people who we like. Okay, there's nothing wrong with that. But the idea that we have robust exchanges where we talk about our expectations and what we want to see and really hold them accountable. I mean, what do y'all think? Do y'all think that we hold them accountable well? Tell me, here's an experiment. On the Super Talk text line, 615-737-9986, I want you to tell me one thing that you've asked a member of Congress or senator to do that you followed up with them that they have done. I'm not asking, generally speaking, do you like them or not? I'm simply saying, can you name something they've done that you've asked for that they followed through? And it doesn't have to be just you asking for it. A bunch of people can ask for it. I think that's part of the problem, is we don't expect much. We don't expect much follow through. We don't expect things to get done. Well, if we're not expecting much out of the federal government, if we're not expecting things to really get done, we should just kind of, again, take a hatchet to it and shrink its size. And just say, we don't expect much, but we don't want to pay for very much either. We'll let the state be the seat of government. We'll let the state figure it out. That's federalism. That's what I support. Is let's figure this out in a way where the state becomes more powerful. And when I say the state, I don't mean the bureaucratic state. I mean the state legislature, the state government is more powerful and the federal government loses power. I think that makes a lot of sense. Brad said we need term limits. I go back and forth with this, Brad. You know, I understand the utility of term limits. You say you get your terms and you're done. But so what happens when you get somebody who's really good, who's a good leader, who does take the hatchet to government, who does push for those things? I mean, that's 9009 makes maybe the best point I've seen all day. I don't think we know what to ask from whom. I think that's a problem in large part. Yeah, I think you're right. What do you actually expect them to be able to do? And if you don't, then we play these weird navel-gazing games about, like, who's the true conservative, who's ultra, who's super MAGA, who's double super MAGA. None of that means anything. I want a big tent with people that will agree with me, and we vote in the same direction, and we try to limit the scope and reach of government, and then I can tell you how I did that. How about I'm not going to engage in deficit spending? That's consistent. I can look at your track record and see that you didn't do it. Here's what happens. I'm not going to engage in deficit spending, but I don't want to shut down the government. Okay, fine. 1630 says, Rand Paul got my daughter an emergency passport in less than a week. And that kind of stuff, actually, I should say, take exception to that. There are those instances, and I think that's really important. And I'm willing to bet 1630 votes for Rand Paul because you asked them to help, and they helped. I think we need to be more specific about what we want to see them do, and that does mean doing a little homework and say, hey, is this properly the province of the federal government? Border security is part of it. You can't say general things like secure the border because Secretary Mayorkas would tell you the border is secure. So it has to be specifics. Like, did you reduce the inflow of undocumented individuals or not? That's really what I care about is did you stop the thing or not? We've got to take a break. I'm Cameron Smith. This is the Chris Hand Show, and you're listening to Super Talk 99.7.
Hey, what's up, guys? It's Matt Murphy in the middle of downtown Franklin, Tennessee. We've talked so much about Savory Spice. I thought, why not show you the place? So let's go on in and see what's popping at Savory Spice. As I've always said, you will smell the spices even before you walk in. I can smell them right here in the doorway. Come on in and let's introduce you to the one and only Holly, who is the owner and proprietor of Savory Spice. Say hey, Holly.
Hello, everyone.
Now, enough about Holly. Let's talk about spicy and easy products like the incredible taco soup, which, as I said, you put this in a crock pot, you put all the ingredients that it tells you to buy right there, you put the spices in, and it's so easy. So if you don't know what you're doing around the kitchen, it's a perfect way to find your way around the kitchen, as is the Mediterranean dill risotto. Now, for the holidays, pumpkin pie spice. What doesn't it have, Holly?
Pumpkin.
Doesn't have any pumpkin in it. That's a fun fact for all of you kids out there. Now, if you stop by Savory Spice, either in the Franklin location or at L&L Market, you can get yourself a sample of the dill dip, which is my absolute favorite. Just tell them Matt Murphy sent you to Savory Spice with purchase now. So come by Franklin or L&L Market in Nashville and come see Holly and the entire crew at Savory Spice.
Did FEMA discriminate against Tennessee Trump voters too? We'll let you hear about that coming up at 11 on Super Talk 99.7 WTN.
Welcome back. I hear a chainsaw. Maybe they're already getting started on the federal government. That would be awesome. Mason agrees. Folks, we got to figure out what we want to do, and we got to figure out how we measure it and how we hold them accountable, because everybody who's excited right now about Republicans taking control in Washington, if we just say, yay, we won, and don't ask for anything and have no expectations, it's going to be a disaster.
Yeah, we're not going to get anywhere. We're just going to stay stagnant in our little rejoicing corner.
Right. We will feel good.
Pointless.
We will feel good that the liberals cried, and that will be the end of it. And that's tragic. That is tragic. So let's finish this show up in the last hour with some specific recommendations on the federal level. What do we want? Not how do we want to clap for the Republicans? They work for us. What do we expect them to do? How will we hold them accountable? And listen, if we can't measure it, then it's probably too vague and they're going to love it because they'll just tell you that they did it. So let's think about that. Let's spend that next hour figuring out what it is that we want. I'm Cameron Smith. You're listening to The Chris Hand Show, and this is Super Talk 99.7.
Eleven o'clock on the dot. I'm Ken Weaver with your top stories on this Veterans Day. Thank you, veterans. Full forecast and traffic coming up in 5 minutes. President Biden taking part in his final Veterans Day ceremony as Commander-in-Chief.
Present!
The Armed Forces Honor Guard at Arlington National Cemetery as the president lays a wreath at the tomb of the unknown soldier. Did FEMA discriminate against Tennessee Trump voters too? There's an investigation underway.
Tennessee Governor Bill Lee announced an investigation yesterday into how FEMA handled relief efforts after Hurricane Helene. It comes after whistleblowers told the Daily Wire that they were instructed to skip houses with Trump signs or flags as workers canvassed Florida areas where Hurricane Milton hit. Their job was to identify which residents could qualify for federal aid, but the whistleblowers told the Daily Wire they skipped at least 20 homes because of that directive. The supervisor at the center of it, Marnie Washington, has been fired. Governor Lee says he'll work with State Attorney General Jonathan Skrmetti to determine if homes were skipped in Tennessee, too. Joan Jones, WTN News.
Well, Arizona finished counting votes over the weekend, declaring President Trump won its electoral votes. So now comes the work of appointing the people who will carry out his agenda in Washington, D.C. Today, we learned who will serve as the country's borders are.
President-elect Trump announcing he's hiring former Immigration and Customs Enforcement Director Tom Homan to the position of border czar. Homan will be in charge of deporting undocumented immigrants. He recently spoke to 60 Minutes.
I hear a lot of people say, the talk of a mass deportation is racist. It's threatening to the immigrant community. It's not threatening to the immigrant community. It should be threatening to the illegal immigrant community.
Illegal border crossings surged under the Biden administration with nearly 3 million in fiscal year 2024, according to Homeland Security's website. There have been more than 10.8 million illegal encounters since 2021. Also this morning, Trump has selected New York Congresswoman Elise Stefanik to be the U.S. ambassador to the United Nations. And we've learned that Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer will not allow the Republican who flipped a Pennsylvania Senate seat to attend the Senate's orientation because he doesn't consider the race to be resolved yet. Even though the Associated Press project Dave McCormick defeated Democrat incumbent Bob Casey, Casey's yet to concede. He claims there are still thousands of ballots yet to be counted. McCormick says mathematically there's no path for Senator Casey to win. And a stolen ambulance was recovered last night. The guy who's accused of stealing it has been arrested. Police say 32-year-old Patrick Foltz climbed behind the wheel of the ambulance at Sycamore Shoals Hospital Saturday morning, headed to I-81. That's where police spotted him in Greene County on Sunday morning, deploying spike strips and stopping the vehicle. The hospital says no patients or employees were in the ambulance when it was stolen. That's the latest news. Weather's next. I'm Ken Weaver, WTN News.
Welcome back to the final hour of the Chris Hand Show. You guys have been awesome today. I'm really excited on the Super Talk text line, 615-737-9986. We're having ideas. We're talking about what can we do with Republican control of government. I want to talk a little bit about immigration because I think it's really important. And I also want to address the issue. I said this a little bit earlier. I think it's really important. We've got to be able to measure things. I know that sounds super simple, but if you ask a politician to do a thing or support a thing, a lot of times those are really vague. I get it that we can look at a voting record and say, oh, well, they voted this way or that. But what we really need to figure out is, how do I measure the objective that I care about? And y'all, I'm asking y'all to nerd out with me a little bit here. But one of the things that I do for the company that I work for in Franklin called Thanks, which helps you grow business with gratitude, is I do operations. And one of the things that most folks who do operations know is that if you can't measure it, you can't measure progress against a goal. If you can't tell me where you want to be, then we don't know and have a measurable path to the goal, then we can't do it. So that should be the same in the federal government. What do I mean by that? If we want to address immigration, the metric that we really need to look at is border encounters. We look at those because they give us the best approximation of what the flow of people who are not coming into the country permissibly looks like. So if we want our political class to do a thing, we've got to say these border encounters, they either need to go down, but if they don't go down, we need to know that these claims are adjudicated quickly and they're sent back to country of origin. Period. That's how that works. And if they say, well, we're going to try, or we're going to do this, or we're going to do that, no. We're going to process this quickly. And I know it was easy to pile on the Langford bill, the immigration reform bill. I can promise you, even with Republican control, we're going to look at that language of processing claims and say, you know what? This is actually pretty good language. Because what do we know happens on the immigration stuff? People come in and they claim asylum. It doesn't matter whether they have a legitimate claim or not. Folks have just said, come in, claim asylum. They'll parole you into the interior. Then you can go where you want and they can't find you. That's absolutely how it works. What the Langford bill had was language that said, no, we're going to have a screening process. So if you're detained at the border and you claim asylum, then we're going to effectively do a micro adjudication of your claim. And if you don't have a legitimate asylum claim, we're going to deport you quickly. And that's the point. 6997 says you can only manage what you can measure, and I cannot agree with that more. That is extremely well put. If you can't measure things, that's the reason when I talk about spending, I can measure it. I can look and see how much did you spend that you don't have. We have public information on this, and I can break it down by everything. So this is 1445 says this is why we need single issue bills. Agreed. I don't think that we should have some states like Alabama, for example. You'll know that's where, I came from. I still write in Alabama and do some other things in Alabama. They had a single subject rule at the state legislature. You could not have multiple subjects in the same bill to try to create a Franken bill. In Washington, they do. It's an omnibus, right? They do that all the time. Rope in things that you don't want with things you do, so you have to vote for it. Otherwise, we shut down the government. What I'd like to have happen is that shutting down the government doesn't matter. That if you threaten me with shutting down the government, well, it doesn't matter because the states and everybody else and all the other functions that are autopilot just kind of go. And so it's largely irrelevant. You can't take a hostage. I understand it's controversial to spread the federal government around the country. I think it would matter a lot more because then people could see, oh, well, this agency that we do need is in my state, and here's why I care about it. And so this appropriations bill needs to be funded. You start having those conversations. Several of you have said line item veto, but I think the problem there is you have constitutional issues. That you have a duly enacted law and then the president comes in and says, I'll veto certain things that I don't like, but I get to keep the rest. I don't think that's how that works. It's veto it or don't. But if we don't have, I like this one. 0344 says, and if those countries accept their citizens back, we should cut off any economic support to those countries. No more money. Well, unfortunately, it's not that we give a ton of money to some of these countries. Like Venezuela is a good example. There's a lot of folks that come from Venezuela because they're fleeing the regime. We don't have diplomatic relationships with that regime because they're nuts. And we should cut off funding to the states that refuse to assist in deportation. Cut off all federal funding to your state and see how fast they turn. We can say those things, but it's really hard to pull that off. Mike makes the point, we haven't even secured the House yet, and Trump's pulling a congresswoman from a liberal state. How shall we be replaced? Governor of New York appointment? Yeah, so this is a point that I think is relevant. I actually had this discussion on election night with some friends saying, we got to be real careful. We didn't have a huge majority in the House to begin with. We're not going to have a huge majority in the House, even if we do win it. And so if Trump is pulling people from seats that are currently Republican and they get to be appointed by a Democratic governor, then wow, we're shooting ourselves in the foot. So I think that's the kind of thing that we need to be tactically thinking about, and I'm sure Trump and his advisors are doing that. Eric from Nashville has some thoughts on the cabinet. Eric, tell me what you're thinking.
Hey, I haven't a whole lot I think about it. What I'm thinking is, I hope, and I'm a longtime Trump supporter. I'm not about the diversity. I am black, but I hope that he thinks about maybe making his cabinet a little more colorful, because his first time around, he didn't. And he has plenty of black and brown, i.e. black and Latino people who support him, who are in politics, who are in business, who are smart people, men and women of color, who could probably help him out quite a bit. So I hope he thinks about that. Somebody tells him to get her out too. And I missed some stuff you brought up, but I like a lot of things you said today about maybe moving some departments, i.e., do we really need that? Like the movie Dave. Have you seen that where Dave is like, hey, do we need this? Do you want to tell these kids they can't eat because of your budget and your department? And I think that's probably what we do a lot of looking at and doing something like that. And I'm going to take one more question just a minute. I can listen to the radio because you brought this up before about adding or not adding states, and I don't know how dangerous that would be. But like i.e. Puerto Rico and District of Columbia, I don't know why that'd be dangerous to add a state. I missed that day you're talking about that. And also, I really don't care. I'm frustrated. I don't care who does it, Democrat, Republican, Independent, but I'm a veteran. And I can't stand the fact that I voluntarily served, but people are crossing the border and they're getting money that me and my brothers and sisters are getting. I not as bad off as some of my brothers and sisters who came back injured worse than I did, but I got to jump through hoops to get any kind of funding from the federal government, i.e. the VA, where if I leave the country, sneak across, I guess they'll give me a check, but now I can't get anything.
Yeah.
I shouldn't have to pause to make a living and get by. It's just ridiculous.
All right. Well, I appreciate it, Eric. Thank you for your service. And look, it's Veterans Day. Thank you, veteran. But what Eric's saying about the VA, my grandmother, my grandfather passed away when he was struggling with dementia, not doing well, and we were looking because he was eligible for VA benefits and because he was a veteran. And my grandmother said, there's no way I would ever let your grandfather go to the VA. And that was really telling for me, that my grandmother just, and frankly, my grandfather too, were like, no, the VA is awful. This is a resource of last resort. And I mean, that's tragic. But looking at ways that we can say, how do we more effectively provide for our veterans? Because they served. So let's serve them. Let's do what we need to do to help them. And, my guess is whether it's TRICARE or something like that says, hey, we're going to make sure that you've got good health care coverage and we'll do away with the bureaucracy. Let's do that. It's not that hard. It's just the will to do these things. And that's where I find Democrats are willing to go burn some capital. They did it with the Affordable Care Act. I was there when it happened. I watched them do it. They said, this is a liberal priority and we're going to do it and we're going to suffer the political consequences because we know that not everybody's going to love the thing we love. Okay, cool. Also, Eric, Dr. Ben Carson's black. I think the thing that we should look at is when folks are qualified for the positions, it's great to have diversity, but it's diversity of ideas. It's diversity of where'd you come from. The left has made diversity of race and gender and these other demographics paramount over anything else. And all things equal, sure, I want diversity. But what's funny is the one kind of diversity that Democrats prove that they don't like is ideological. You can be all kinds of diverse, and they're like, come on into the coalition. But if you tell me you disagree with my take on gender or you disagree with my perspective on DEI, the Democrats will cast you out like hot garbage. If they disagree, Connecticut Senator Chris Murphy was pointing this out today. When the Connecticut liberal is pointing this out, something's up. But he was saying that folks have different perspectives. We've seen this within the Republican coalition, even on abortion. We're in Tennessee. We're a very conservative, pro-life state. But there are now Republicans who have a wide range of views on abortion. That's the truth. And that's amazing. And what I mean by that is I don't agree with everybody, but the fact that we now have a coalition of people that disagree but still stay together, and I've seen that, right? I think that it's really important to have disagreements and still stay apart. Imagine that if you disagree with your pastor, you leave the church. And then you disagree with your pastor again, you leave the church again. Man, you're never going to church. Same thing with our politics. If we say we disagree with you, therefore we are banishing you, this is an actual problem. And Chris Hand, when he was filling in for Dan Mandis earlier today, played the clip of, I believe it was Joy Reid, talking about, well, maybe you don't need to go spend time with your family over Thanksgiving because of the election. Absolutely ridiculous. You should spend time with your family. Your family is more important than politics. It is. I don't have any problem saying that. It is massively critical that we put politics in the right focus. Our faith, our families, our relationships all matter more than who we elect in November. I'm not saying it's not important. I'm just saying we've had our policies, our priorities so radically skewed. In the left, I don't know if y'all noticed that, but when Joe Biden won, I don't recall all the conservative pundits saying, well, you might not want to go to Thanksgiving with your liberal family. And that's the problem. That's the left saying, well, we know what's best. And if you disagree with us, you may hurt our mental health. That's hot garbage. Go to church, go to family, go to these places. And when you disagree, stay there because it matters a lot. 3293 says you would go to a church where the pastor did not preach the Bible. This may sound wild, but not all disagreements are created equally. I'm not going to go to a church where the pastor doesn't faithfully preach the gospel that's in the Bible. But if the pastor says, well, we need to be, I wrote a column on this, literally disagreed with my pastor on his approach to the election and how much partisan politics should be in the church. This is a perspective on preference and a perspective on the priority of the gospel. It's not that he was not preaching the gospel faithfully. It's just we had a disagreement. Do I still go to church there? Yeah. Does he know I disagreed with him? Sure. But that's part of being an adult, is we have disagreements, and particularly the minor ones, we just keep on trucking. And that's a big deal. When folks say your speech is violence and you can't, come on. We got to be a little more resilient as Americans. And the snowflakes, we got to go ahead and melt. I don't care if you're Republican or Democrat. No more snowflake. We've got 40 minutes left in this show. Let's close it strong. I'm Cameron Smith. This is the Chris Hand Show, and you're listening to Super Talk 99.7.
Did you know you're overpaying for your health and wellness products?
With over 20 company-owned brands offering its members vitamins, supplements, wellness, and skincare products, you're able to save up to 70% off retail.
Members Nutrition can't change your life, but we can change the way you live.
Traffic in the Gulch, it is closed for Veterans Day. We are talking about the parade. This is going to be Broadway between I-40 and 8th Avenue, the Veterans Day parade there in the Gulch. Coming up here at 11:30, here's some of the Veterans Day ceremony at Arlington National Cemetery. And we've got an update on the process to pick a successor to Mitch McConnell coming up at 11:30 on Super Talk 99.7 WTN.
Welcome back to the Chris Hand Show. I'm Cameron Smith. I was hoping that the traffic closure was due to Veterans Day and not LSU having to send that rented tiger back to wherever it came from. All I know is Omar Bradley could not stop the Crimson Tide.
No, sir. No. Boy, Jalen Milroe, what a night.
Yeah.
I mean, he just chewed him up.
He did.
I mean, just chewed him up.
Little known fact, in that game, Alabama had 1,200 rushing yards and 5 passing yards. We've basically decided not to do the passing anymore. So we'll see how it goes. But these are the things that you should discuss over Thanksgiving with family. And if you're like me and you leave the state for Thanksgiving, I will go to Pennsylvania. I will go into the Lion's Den, where my wife's Democratic family has many thoughts and feelings about the election, to which I will tell them, because I love them, that they need to grow up. And that's just the truth.
Is that going to go over well?
It probably will not, and my wife may leave me here. And then I will go to the Iron Bowl. So
There you
just
go.
saying, consolation prizes. But I think this is a big deal. This is a big deal that we need to be a more resilient country. We need to be more resilient people. This is what I'm trying to raise in my own home. I got 4 boys. Life does not care about all of your feels, and it does not modify itself to what you want.
No, sir.
You must deal with adversity, learn from it, and continue on. And what I put myself through excruciating harm. I listened to Elizabeth Warren's post-election tweet where she sat there in her mansion explaining how tough it was and how she's just going to be there in solidarity with everyone. No, it's an election. You win some, you lose some. Welcome. This is how we've done it for as long as we've been a country. And I think some of our politicians are starting to drink their own Kool-Aid, that the election, all of the world depends on one election. It doesn't. They've been lying to us forever about this election will change the universe forever. If we go the wrong way, you'll die. Democracy is over. None of this stuff is true. It's an election. Use it to do good things and help people. If you don't, they'll elect the other team. That's how this goes. It's how it will continue to go. And so my message to Republicans now is don't squander the opportunity. We're not going to squander the opportunity anyway. We got 30 minutes to make this the best end of show in a long time, and not even Omar Bradley, the fat tiger, can mess it up. I'm Cameron Smith. This is the Chris Hand Show, and you're listening to Super Talk 99.7.
$11:30 on the dot. I'm Ken Weaver with your top stories. Full forecast in 5 minutes, and it is Veterans Day. The drum roll after President Biden lays a wreath at the tomb of the unknown soldier there during a solemn ceremony at Arlington National Cemetery. Well, Senate Republicans meeting behind closed doors later this week to pick a successor to Mitch McConnell, the longest-serving party leader in Senate history. Stephen Portnoy has more.
3 senators are in the running to replace Mitch McConnell to serve as leader of the new GOP majority. John Cornyn of Texas, John Thune of South Dakota, and Florida Senator Rick Scott, who now has the backing of prominent voices in the MAGA movement. Up until now, President-elect Trump has remained neutral, but Trump is insisting that whoever wins lets the Senate take full recesses so he can make temporary appointments of picks who might have difficulty getting confirmed. Under both parties' control for over a decade now, Congress has stymied the president's use of the recess appointment power.
McConnell's continuing his service in the Senate, just stepping down from his leadership post. A Metro Nashville police officer has been fired after a DUI arrest early Saturday morning. Fellow officers arrested 50-year-old Sergeant Michael Dixon, who was sitting in his truck in the driveway of a home on Old Hickory Boulevard. The homeowner calling police after Dixon reportedly pulled up to the house, then walked onto the front porch. It wasn't a lot of rain, but what did fall over the weekend helped make a dent in our drought. The U.S. Drought Monitor showing moderate to extreme drought conditions across Middle Tennessee, especially in Marshall, Bedford, and Lincoln counties. And while those localities haven't seen as much rain with this weekend system that is, even a few inches have helped in the moderately dry zones. That's the latest news. Weather is next. I'm Ken Weaver, WTN News.
Did you know you're overpaying for your health and wellness products?
With over 20 company-owned brands offering its members vitamins, supplements, wellness, and skincare products, you're able to save up to 70% off retail.
Members Nutrition can't change your life, but we can change the way you live.
Welcome back to the Chris Hand Show. We don't have much time left. I want to just reemphasize, thank a veteran today. Say thanks for your service. Doesn't have to be big or wild, but it's important to appreciate those who served. So let's do it, and let's do it well. 8335 said, pretty sure this last election was the most important one where democracy actually was on the line. Most of the time it's hyperbole, but this one was a whole lot more serious this time around, and thank God it went in our favor. Look, the election results absolutely went in our favor. I don't think take no issue with that. I promise you, the next election that we have, 2026 midterms, will be extremely consequential, the most important of our lifetime. Democracy will be on the ballot. You can take that to the bank. Because politicians need government to be high stakes for you to care. I want really boring, proficient government that just does things that need to be done and not a lot else. And then you let the private sector do its thing. Let free Americans come up with awesome stuff. You know, the highlight of my week this time of year is playoff high school football. Under the Friday night lights, Nolensville High School Knights playing Shelbyville at Shelbyville this week. That's fun, man. That's community. That's consequential. That stuff matters day to day. The local election that we just had probably matters more to my day to day than who's in the White House. That's the truth. But politicians don't want to say it like that, because if they do, then you will pay attention to things that matter more than politics, which is exactly what I am suggesting that we all do. Is we should be thankful that, hey, Americans saw how weird Democrats have become and said, in spite of how offensive Republicans and Trump can be at times, the condescending Democrats are worse. So we'll give you guys control of the government. We just need to not blow it. We need to shrink it, rein it in. We have technology. You got Elon Musk over there. Let's be more efficient about doing things. Let's not create inefficiencies just to score political points. That's all that Joe Biden did with the dock workers, was let's give some funds that make sure that we don't do anything about efficiency. Ray says, politics matter because it affects your pocketbook. It affects your family in many different ways, the policies that are put forth. Yes, Ray, I agree with you that politics doesn't matter. I'm just saying it matters less. Most of the folks that Democrats want to go over with tax hikes are wealthy. I mean, they've said north of 400,000. Most folks, it doesn't impact that much. It does impact people when, they have to compete for their own jobs against people that shouldn't be in the country. That's fair. There are things that do matter. There are a lot of things that matter more. That's my point, Ray, is that faith, family, the things that Democrats have heavily discounted matter more, and that's why we should focus on them. Because when you empower families, you focus on your faith and your community, then you don't need the largesse of the federal government. I've got some guys in Nolensville that we're trying to figure out, how do we take care of one another? How do we encourage one another's families? The guys that I coach with when I coach youth sports. By the way, congratulations to the Brentwood Blaze Triple B. Heck of a team this year. Very, very impressed by them. They won the championship for our league. But those coaches and players and their families that I engage with, they matter a lot more. And when you have that fabric, you're not scared and you're not looking for somebody from the federal government to fix it. I don't want you to be afraid. When we talk about policies and ideas, it should be a conversation about, hey, what can we do to make America better and serve each other well? How do we limit the reach of the federal government so that there's more to go around at the local level? How do you take less out of our pockets and launder through Washington, D.C., and let us deal with our own communities? I understand that, we spend time on X and Facebook and all the other things, but we need to get back to our communities. That's not a nutty, wild thing, but if you really we want to talk about socialists a lot and how they're bad. You know what they really want to deal with? Remove your faith, remove your family. The state is your parent. The state is the one that provides. And we should just absolutely fight against that tooth and nail. Because I think, just think about it this way. Who are the folks right now that are telling you that, like, you should let your politics, the affairs of the state, decide whether you can go to Thanksgiving or not? It's not the Republicans. It's because nothing matters more than the state. And the folks that are spewing that, we should not just reject it. The temptation will always be, mark my words, the biggest temptation for Republicans now will be to wield the power of the state in a different way. That's the danger of populism. It's not to remove the power of the state, but to just wield it in a way we like. And so we just trade back and forth with a powerful state. The real challenge is for conservatives to say, no, let's reduce it. Let's reduce its reach and say no. And say, we've had enough. You guys have messed it up. You're not actually giving me what I want. Not even the people who kind of like the government. They're not getting what they want. They think that the state will do good and moral things. It doesn't. That's not how it works. I don't want the government trying to take care of the needs. I want us to. And that's the choice. You either have a heavy state that does the right thing or you can do it. And I'd much prefer us as free people doing the right thing. And that means we got to know our communities, engage our families, disagree, have the back and forth, and then press on. And that is hard in a time, and I've gotten caught up in it. I'll be the first one to say it. I've got caught up in politics and said, I don't like what Trump says, or I don't like Schumer, or I don't like that. I don't interact with those guys. Not on a regular basis. That's not my day to day. And so when I'm letting them get in my headspace and live there rent free, whether it's something I like or something I don't, it's just too much. Like that's occupying space that needs to go to my family, my friends, my neighborhood, that kind of stuff. I know it's wild. I know it's old school, but I think that's what we really need to do. A couple of other things that I want to get through before we have to say goodbye. What happened to Thanksgiving? Does anybody know? Has anyone seen it? Because it is so weird for me that we went from Halloween to Christmas. It's been trending this way, but there's very little room for appreciation. We're talking about it today, appreciating the veterans. We need to appreciate a lot of things and a lot of people. This is I'm acutely aware of this because I work at a company that's named Thanks, right? And so I'm trying to think of, like, how can I show appreciation better? And one of my buddies made this analogy and said that appreciation left unexpressed is like wrapping a Christmas present and putting it in the closet and leaving it there. And I'll tell you, if you want to disarm people, take some of this weirdo politics stuff and make it matter less, just show a little appreciation. Say thanks. Just say, hey, you matter to me. Appreciate you. When somebody does something that's kind, appreciate you. When somebody comes and picks up your trash, hey, thank you. I really appreciate it. 7754 says Thanksgiving doesn't make any money. 0625 said Nolensville ditched their pumpkins November 1st and went straight to Christmas. Yep. Guys, I think we got to show appreciation. I get it. I love Christmas. It's great. I don't know what Thanksgiving music is. I polled my family, and we just basically settled on Travis Tritt's Great Day to Be Alive is probably great Thanksgiving music. But, let's not let Thanksgiving just not happen, right? It's sort of, this is when we eat turkey. I don't love turkey. I don't love turkey at all. When it's deep fried, it's better, but that's just because everything's better when it's deep fried. But I'm just not a huge turkey fan. So at the end of the day, I just don't want to skip over this. Show appreciation for your veterans today. Give it a little time towards Thanksgiving and start thinking about showing appreciation. That one matters to me. And There's one serious one, and then I'll get to the one that's less serious. I saw the headline that almost 230 Tennessee foster kids were placed out of state as DCS struggles with insufficient in-state resources. And that's not just money, guys. That's a place to go. It's foster homes for kids. And this is something I'm passionate about. We've been a therapeutic foster family for several years now with youth villages. They work with DCS, and so we've gotten to see what that is like. And I'll tell y'all, as the season slow down, please give that a thought, right? I mean, this is a mess. And if you don't like the state, the big state, the universal state, the Stalinist state, the worst place is a state to raise kids, right? And these kids need homes. They need people to be willing to shoulder some of the darkness that they're going through. By virtue of the fact that some of these kids are in state custody, things have gone horribly wrong for them. And I don't care about your politics. I don't care about anything else. If you have an opportunity to help a kid and you don't, that's when when I struggle with people. And right now, we got a lot of kids struggling in Tennessee, and we need families to show up for them. You can find my information all over the place. Reach out to me. I'll tell you about our experience, the good, the bad, and the ugly. But the fact that Tennessee doesn't have the right resources and things in place so that we're having to ship these kids out of our state is a problem. We got to take a break. I'm Cameron Smith. You're listening to The Chris Hand Show on Super Talk 99.7.
Hey, what's up, guys? It's Matt Murphy in the middle of downtown Franklin, Tennessee. We've talked so much about Savory Spice. I thought, why not show you the place? So let's go on in and see what's popping at Savory Spice. As I've always said, you will smell the spices even before you walk in. I can smell them right here in the doorway. Come on in, and let's introduce you to the one and only Holly, who is the owner and proprietor of Savory Spice. Say hey, Holly.
Hello, everyone.
Now, enough about Holly. Let's talk about spicy and easy products like the incredible taco soup, which, as I said, you put this in a crock pot, you put all the ingredients that it tells you to buy right there, you put the spices in, and it's so easy. So if you don't know what you're doing around the kitchen, it's a perfect way to find your way around the kitchen, as is the Mediterranean dill risotto. Now, for the holidays, pumpkin pie spice. What doesn't it have, Holly?
Pumpkin.
Doesn't have any pumpkin in it. That's a fun fact for all of you kids out there. Now, if you stop by Savory Spice, either in the Franklin location or at L&L Market, you can get yourself a sample of the dill dip, which is my absolute favorite. Just tell them Matt Murphy sent you to Savory Spice with purchase now. So come by Franklin or L&L Market in Nashville and come see Holly and the entire crew at Savory Spice.
Well, we're back. Chad's here.
Hi.
So it can start all the good things. So one of y'all had a question for me. How many foster kids do I have right now? One. We do respite care as well, which is if a foster parent needs a break, we'll grab another kid and say, hey, come hang out with us for the weekend or something like that. My family currently has a total of 4. My brother has 3. So I'm not just asking you guys to help with providing places for these kids. My family does it. It's not all roses and sunshine.
It is not.
But it matters. And I live in Williamson County. I live in what is about as close to the Magic Kingdom as you can get. Like if Disney were conservative, it would be like that. Like it's literally a land full of castles and people with resources. And man, these kids, a lot of them have nothing. They show up with one bag and that's everything they have to their name. And when you have an opportunity to help a kid and you can do it, I'm not asking people to do anything that they can't. I'm asking you if you can. If you're looking at an empty guest room that just sits there, put a kid in it. 2205 says you don't have to be rich to foster kids. Absolutely. But I'm telling the folks that are some of those folks that have resources, put them to good use. Help these kids. And on that serious note, I welcome Chad.
What's happening, brother?
Well, we've had a good show. We went through it. I asked for specifics. I wanted to know, what do we want if Republicans indeed get the House? They have the trifecta. What do they want? And I got some good specifics. People were actually telling me. It was actually very encouraging.
Like, what do they want? What are they saying they want?
Let's can some of these departments. I looked up the alphabetic list of the agencies, and a lot of them, I couldn't tell you what they do. And I just looked up the A to Z index of U.S. government departments and agencies and started picking letters and said, well, the Farm Service Agency, that sounds pretty cool. Let's see. Let me find some.
How many
other
of them
ones.
overlap? That's always my thing. It's like, why do we have 4 of these agencies that do virtually the same thing?
We have the Federal Geographic Data Committee.
Yeah, they're very important.
It's called Google Maps.
Yeah.
So, I mean, again, a lot of these things, we create them, and then they outlive their purpose, and then nobody cancels them because they create jobs.
You and I are policy wonks because I love policy, and I always tell everybody, the reason that government is nervous is because government is the biggest lobbyist of government right now.
Yes.
And they do not want to lose their jobs. I understand that. But the reality is we have way too many alphabet number, agencies that do virtually nothing. We have a spending problem, but we also have a spending problem of workers.
Yes. We have the Federal Student Aid Information Center.
That's very important.
It's a website.
And how many people do you think work there and make a ton of money? And how much money does it give? When we sit here and say we don't have enough money for stuff, we got plenty of it. It's just not being spent right.
Yeah. And I agree with you with duplication, but it's one of those things that if you engage in this weird process of like, well, we'll move this and this and that, you never get there.
Yeah.
You have to start with, okay, what are we going to cut? Put it on the floor and it's gone. And if Republicans don't do that kind of stuff, then the people are going to say, you're not listening again.
Yeah.
We wanted this to go this way, so we gave these folks the ability to do it. And if they don't.
Well, and you know this as much as anybody, man. The hard part now is governing. And actually doing something. And usually you get 1 or 2 opportunities to do something. And then in America likes to go, whoa, maybe you're going too far. So we switch it up in a midterm. So we'll see. I mean, I'd like to think they're going to get some stuff done. Immigration's obviously going to be one of them. But the agencies and the cleanup, I want to see that big time.
Cool. What are you getting into this afternoon?
We'll talk a little bit about that. We'll talk about the continual waste of time as the Democrats dissect this thing, go over the autopsy, and continue to say, are you sure it wasn't the voters' fault? Are you sure it wasn't this person's fault? They fail to listen over and over again. And that's why I keep doing that. You're going to keep getting what you get.
Amen. I'm excited to listen to that. Hey, and you know what? Go spend time with your family. Go to some of those high school football games. I see Antioch High School out there. I want to make sure that you're spending time with your family. You're doing the things that you're letting people know what you're grateful for. That you are ignoring the left that's saying politics is king. It's all that matters. Because it's not.
Nope.
We got to get going. Chad's coming at you. I'm Cameron Smith. This is the Chris Hand Show on Super Talk 99.7.